Good morning, students. Welcome to Good Samaritan School Isapur online classes. This is your SST class, and today we are going to study chapter 10 Traders, Kings, and Pilgrims. Jagini at the market. Jagini looked forward to the fair in the village. She loved to see and touch the pots and pans of shiny metal, steel, bright plastic buckets, cloth printed with brilliant floral designs, and clockwork toys, all of which came from the city. The men who spread out their wares came in buses and trucks and went back at the end of the day. Why were they always on the move? She wondered. Her mother explained that they were traders, people who bought things where they were made and sold them elsewhere. So these are known as traders who are always on the move, and they buy from where it is made and they sell it elsewhere where it is to make it available. How to find out about trade and traders? You read about the northern black polished ware in chapter 9. This fine pottery, especially bowls and plates, were found from several archaeological sites throughout the subcontinent. How do you think it reached these places? Traders may have carried them from the places where they were made to sell them at other places. South India was famous for gold, spices, especially pepper and precious stones. So these items were very famous in South India. They were available there. Pepper was particularly valued in the Roman Empire, so much so that it was known as black gold. So pepper was known as black gold, and it was exported from South India. So traders carried many of these goods to Rome in ships, across the sea, and by land in caravans. There must have been quite a lot of trade, as many Roman gold coins have been found in South India. So now, traders explored several sea routes. Some of these followed the coasts. There were others across the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, where sailors took advantage of the monsoon winds to cross the seas more quickly. So what would the monsoon winds do? They would push the ship in the direction in which it was going. So the speed would be faster. That's how they used the wind, monsoon wind. So if they wanted to reach the western coast of the subcontinent from East Africa or Arabia, they chose to sail with the southwest monsoon, and sturdy ships had to be built for these long journeys. Now we will see about new kingdoms along the coasts. The southern half of the subcontinent is marked by a long coastline and with hills, plateaus, and river valleys. Amongst the river valleys, that of the Kaveri is the most fertile. So Kaveri river is there, which is most fertile. Chiefs and kings who controlled the river valleys and the coasts became rich and powerful. Sangam poems mention the Muvendar. Muvendar, this is a Tamil word meaning three chiefs, used for the heads of three ruling families, the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, who became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago. So, if we look at map on page number 117, you can see in the map of India that in South India, in the southern part, here is Chera, Pandya, and Chola. So they were the three chiefs. Each of the three chiefs had two centers of power, one inland and one on the coast. Of these 6 cities, two were very important: Puhar or Kaveripattinam, the port of the Cholas, and Madurai, the capital of the Pandyas. So these were the important areas. The chiefs did not collect regular taxes. Instead, they demanded and received gifts from the people. They also went on military expeditions and collected tribute from neighboring areas. They kept some of the wealth and distributed the rest amongst their supporters, including members of their family, soldiers, and poets. Many poets whose compositions are found in the Sangam collection composed poems in praise of chiefs who often rewarded them with precious stones, gold, horses, elephant, chariots, and fine cloth. Around 200 years later, a dynasty known as the Satavahanas became powerful in western India. So again we are going to see map on page number 113. Here you can see this particular dynasty became popular in the west, Satavahana. The most important ruler of the Satavahanas was Gautamiputra Sri Satkarni. We know about him from an inscription composed on behalf of his mother, Gautami Balashri. So his mother composed a poem or an inscription for her son. He and other Satavahana rulers were known as Lords of the Dakshin Patha, literally the route leading to the south. Dakshin means south and Path means way. So this means that literally means route leading to the south, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region. He sent his army to the eastern, western, and southern coasts. Now we are going to see the story of Silk Route. The rich, glossy colors of silk as well as its smooth texture make it highly valued fabric in most societies. Making silk is a complicated process. Raw silk has to be extracted from the cocoon of silkworms, spun into thread, and then woven into cloth. Techniques of making silk were first invented in China around 7,000 years ago, while the methods remained a closely guarded secret for thousands of years. Some people from China who went to distant lands on foot, horseback, and on camels carried silk with them. The paths they followed came to be known as the Silk Route. Sometimes Chinese rulers sent gifts of silk to rulers in Iran and West Asia, and from there the knowledge of silk spread further west. About 2000 years ago, wearing silk became the fashion amongst rulers and rich people in Rome. It was very expensive as it had to be brought all the way from China along dangerous roads through mountains and deserts. So that time transport was not so developed, so they had to come along the dangerous route, like dangerous roads through mountains and deserts. So that's why silk was very costly. People living along the route often demanded payments for allowing traders to pass through. So people who lived along the path in the area where the Silk Route was, they demanded money for them to allow them to pass. Look at map 6, page number 84 to 85, which shows the Silk Route and its branches. So we are going to see page number 84-85. Here you can see, here is the Kushanas, and this one is the Silk Route, the route which is marked by this red color. So this is the Silk Route. One is there in the ocean as well. Okay, So this is the Silk Route. What about Kushanas? We will read shortly. Some kings tried to control large portions of the route. This was because they could benefit from taxes, tributes, and gifts that were brought by traders traveling along the route. In return, they often protected the traders who passed through their kingdoms from attacks by robbers. So they also tried to control the route to get the benefits, and they provided protection to the travelers. The best known of the rulers who controlled the Silk Route were the Kushanas, who ruled over Central Asia and Northwest India around 2000 years ago. So I just showed you Kushanas in the map, and they controlled the Silk Route. Their two major centers of power were Peshawar and Mathura. Takshila was also included in their kingdom. During their rule, a branch of the Silk Route extended from Central Asia down to the seaports at the mouth of the river Indus, from where silk was shipped westwards to the Roman Empire. The Kushanas were amongst the earliest rulers of the subcontinent to issue gold coins. These were used by traders along the Silk Route. So, children, this is about silk. This is the story of the Silk Route and how it was controlled, and it was a difficult route. So I hope you understood this. For your homework, you have to mark the Silk Route on the map. World map, you will mark the Silk Route, you will mark the Kushanas and their empire, which is Peshawar and Takshila, main empire. Okay, so this is for your homework. I hope you understood. We will meet again in the next class.